What happens when a utopia turns into a cult? From assassination attempts, doomsday scenario, to the largest bioterrorist attack in US history. This is the curious and dark case of the Rajneeshpuram cult.
Salmonella outbreak in the Dow. Salmonella can be very serious, causing extreme dehydration.
That salmonella outbreak, a mysterious outbreak, left 750 people ill.
Who would do such a terrifying thing? Who would poison a whole town?
On the 11th of December, 1931, a little boy named Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh was born in India to his two parents. But little did anyone know, this harmless child would soon become one of the deadliest and most controversial cult leaders in history. Despite being unremarkable academically as a child, he showed a keen interest in spirituality and meditation at a young age. After completing his schooling, he went on to study philosophy in college, earning himself a master's degree. Rajneesh later began to teach as a professor at the same college, but this would soon prove to be a fatal mistake for the institution. You see, Rajneesh was a true thinker. His classes were dynamic and controversial, often denouncing other religious philosophies while promoting his own beliefs. Rajneesh's charisma, wisdom, and controversial opinions began to gather a loyal fan base of supporters. By this time, colleges and students realized that Rajneesh, later known as Osho, wasn't just a professor. He was a guru, a leader, and used his academic career to convert students into his followers. But by then, it was already too late. By 1966, having already amassed a sizable following, he decided to leave his academic career to become a full-time spiritual leader. During this period, he also began to grow financially, offering donations, meditation camps, therapy sessions, books, and other services to his followers. His open-minded and non-traditional approach to life attracted many people, and he soon became a household name in India. In 1981, Osho decided it was time for the next big decision, one that would ultimately place countless lives at the very brink of death. With an already massive following and potential for financial growth opportunities, Osho made the decision to move to America. This move led to the purchase of the Big Muddy Ranch in Oregon, where he established the Rajneeshpuram commune, marking the beginnings of a utopian society. Life at the Rajneeshpuram was an utopian dream, a heaven on earth. It was located in the small town of Antelope in Wasco County, Oregon. In the morning, the commune came alive with sounds of nature, beginning the day with dynamic meditation, a practice involving vigorous breathing, emotional release, jumping while chanting Who, and silent stillness. After meditation, a massive party would ensue, filled with dancing and singing. Residents then engaged in work assignments, as Osho believed in working for passion rather than money, a statement that would prove to be ironic later on. Lunch featured organic, fresh, and predominantly vegetarian food, aligning with Osho's teachings. Afternoons included therapy sessions for personal development, emotional healing, and spiritual growth. By night, Osho would have one of his seminars as residents would get ready for bed. The lights of the community would dim, and the Oregon sky, shimmering like scattered diamonds, would cast a tranquil veil over Rajneeshpuram. As for now, the residents could rest peacefully in the utopian that is Rajneeshpuram, an utopian that would soon unravel into a terrifying cult. As the community of Rajneeshpuram grew and flourished, strange and disturbing events began to unfold in the background. It all began with strange and peculiar advertising campaigns in Oregon newspapers, a community promoting itself as a place for sexual pleasure to achieve enlightenment.
Isn't your leader the free sex guru?
Free sex, we don't charge for it, if you mean that.
Right.
In the nearby town of Antelope, residents reported seeing Rajneeshpuram members engaging in intercourse in public areas. However, that was only the surface of the terrifying cult that is Rajneeshpuram, as letters poured in about missing children cases, physical and sexual assault, it became clear as day that there was something wrong. In 1980, a German reporter was able to sneak into the cult and capture some of the most disturbing footage the world has ever seen. But why was this such a big deal? If they weren't affecting residents in Antelope, why did people care so much? That we would soon find out. But for now, the residents of Antelope wanted the people in Rajneeshpuram out. Most members of the cult were illegal immigrants, and their cultish behavior under the rule of Osho freaked them out. But in a turn of events, the Rajneeshpuram would instead completely take over the town of Antelope. Although the cult itself was incredibly poor, Osho himself ironically was immensely wealthy and would receive donations on a daily basis. This allowed Rajneeshpuram to buy properties throughout Antelope and eventually take over everything. The few residents that were left would soon be met with an even worse fate. By 1982, the tension between the two groups had reached its peak.
That woman is the closest thing to Hitler that I have ever seen in my life. And I have seen the people coming out of Buchenwald, I've seen them coming out of Dachau.
It was a battle between two opposing philosophies. The worship between man versus God, openness versus tradition, and most importantly, a war on territory. The town of Antelope wasn't the only obstacle the Rajneeshpuram were facing. By 1983, it was apparent that Wasco County, which consisted of Antelope and many more towns in the region, were also attempting to put an end to Rajneeshpuram. Sheila, Osho's right hand, would take charge at this time, as Osho took his vow of silence. The cult was in a bad place. They needed power badly, but what could they do? In 1984, a general and primary election for Wasco County would take place, and of course, Sheila and Rajneeshpuram wanted a piece of that. This wouldn't come without any problems. There were over 23,000 people living in Wasco County at that time, and the Rajneeshpuram, being labeled as a cult, had no real chance of winning the election. But this wouldn't stop them. Simply put, Sheila was a master at finding loopholes. She avoided immigration fraud, marriage fraud, and eventually even murder fraud. So it didn't take long before she developed her next big plan. She began recruiting homeless people throughout major cities in Oregon and convinced them to move to their commune. In doing so, they not only provided these marginalized individuals with a second chance to rebuild their lives, but also expanded their community's reach and influence. As the date for the general election approached, Sheila and the Rajneeshpuram were confident that they were going to win. They had countless homeless people ready to vote for them, but then it all went horribly wrong.
Because I have reason to believe there are organized efforts to fraudulently register people in Wasco County to vote in the November general election, decided to do a blanket rejection of all new voter registrations in Wasco County.
Due to speculations, the homeless members of the Rajneeshpuram were denied access to vote in the general election. This in turn would cause outrage throughout the community. But why would they deny access? Is this against constitutional rights? Did the freedom of America get compromised? This ever-growing wrath would eventually turn into something much, much more darker. In the fall of 1984, Betty Olson, a retired school teacher and longtime resident of the Dalles, Oregon, enjoyed her peaceful life in the small town. That day, Betty decided to have lunch at her favorite restaurant with a couple of her friends. The salad bar, as usual, looked fresh and inviting, stocked with vegetables, dressings, and toppings. Betty would fill her plate with the usual. As she sat down, she began to eat. This, however, would be a fatal mistake. Later that evening, Betty began to feel unwell. At first, it was a mild nausea, then it was cramps, vomiting, and relentless diarrhea. By the next morning, she was in dire condition. Weak and dehydrated, she was quickly put in the emergency room where she saw others in the same conditions. This wasn't just your average food poisoning. Around 750 people had suffered from salmonella, and coincidentally, it all happened in the same day and night. But who would do this? Salmonella is oftentimes a life-threatening illness. Around 420 deaths occur per year due to salmonella. Why would someone commit such acts of poisoning, and who was behind all of this? Approximately 50 miles away, in the center of the community, Sheila and her followers would rejoice at the poisoning of hundreds of local residents. They had planned the attack just days before the election. The goal of the attack was to sicken people so they wouldn't be able to vote. They had snuck into tens of restaurants throughout Wasco County and secretly contaminated the food with lab-made salmonella. With this act, they not only cemented fear throughout Oregon, but also attracted the attention of the FBI. Before the FBI could catch them, Rajneeshpuram was already beginning to crumble from within. Throughout their journey, Sheila had always been Osho's right hand, but everything began to change during this period. As the influence and power of Rajneeshpuram grew, high-profile celebrities started joining the cult, gifting Osho extravagant and luxurious items, including 93 Rolls-Royces and millions of dollars. During this time, rumors circulated that Osho began using drugs provided by the celebrities. This led him to start envisioning a future where he would create atomic bombs to destroy the Earth, constructing bunkers for his followers so they could rule the world together. If this plan had ever been executed or even attempted, it would have undoubtedly marked the deadliest cult in human history. Given their prior success in bioterrorism, the possibility of them developing atomic weapons was not out of the question. Thankfully, that never happened. The authorities intervened before Osho's grandiose and deadly visions could be realized. As internal drama escalated within Rajneeshpuram, Sheila and several of her close associates fled the commune in late 1985, attempting to escape the mounting legal pressure. However, their efforts were in vain. Sheila was arrested in West Germany on October 28, 1985, and later extradited to the United States, where she faced charges related to bioterrorism, attempted murder, and other crimes. Osho, also known as Bhagwan Shree Rajneesh, would be charged with immigration fraud and was sent back to India. The Rajneeshpuram cult is such a unique and complex story. The story has been twisted since the dawn of this century, with Netflix documentaries and videos constantly having bias and information left out. However, the truth is more complex than that. Like most events in history, there is no definite black and white answer, but rather, it's somewhere in the gray. The cult advocated for community, belonging, joy, and openness, all things we still see today. Osho, the cult leader himself, had ideologies and philosophies way ahead of his time. Their government style of theocratic communalism offered a glimpse of what a utopian or a dystopian would look like. Not to mention, the mastermind behind this cult is still in debate till this day. Rather it was Sheila or Osho, the story of Rajneeshpuram is a tragic, dark, yet inspiring event in history. It teaches us the dangers of putting faith in one person and to always think critically. As for now, Rajneeshpuram remains a compelling lesson in our modern world.
Know your way.